And good evening, everybody. Welcome to 14 hours as we record this right now before the tip-off of the very first game of the season
Tomorrow.
tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Tomorrow. It starts tomorrow, and none of these crappy, stupid exhibition games. Although we did have a decent one last night. Christian Brothers taking down. I guess you could call them a mid-major. Not that big of a shock, but the most overrated program. But it starts tomorrow.
Starts tomorrow, 14 hours. Welcome to our what is normally going to be our Under the Radar podcast for, as we already did an Under the Radar preseason preview. We don't have very much additional Under the Radar information, so we're going to make this an Under and Over the Radar preseason, start of season special combination with bracketology and whatever else we decide to talk about. I'm Chad Sherwood, your host for the Under the Radar segments, streaming to you live from Big Ten country here in New Jersey. And with me, as always, the NCAA puppet master himself, David Griggs. David, how are you?
I'm great. Oh, and this is the best day out of the year. It's not Christmas. It's not the 4th of July. It is the night before the second Friday of November. And the reason is we have the longest expanse of college basketball ahead of us that we are ever going to have. It'll never be this long again, because tomorrow we'll have one less day of college basketball ahead of us.
I'll actually make things a little worse for you, David. Tomorrow is the number one day for the most games played in a single day involving Division I teams for the entire season.
Yes,
So,
and it is largely because so many of them are not playing other Division I teams. So
after tomorrow, we will not have another day like that again the rest of the season. I believe there's close to 160 different games tomorrow.
right, but at least I mean the next day we will not see a game is. No, that's not even true. I believe the next day we will have without college basketball is the Monday after the Elite Eight. Is that correct? I mean, we have basketball every day until then.
No, actually, I believe we have 2 days around the Christmas holiday. I believe the 24th and the 26th of December, there won't be any games. But
Why not?
other than that,
Why not?
though the 25th there will be games from that Diamond Head Classic out in Hawaii. But day before and day after Christmas, no basketball.
Well, I used to like Christmas, but I don't know.
So that makes today even better than Christmas.
It does, yes. And I've been waiting for this since you pointed it out on the message board. Let's get to our first order of business, Jed.
Please.
Okay. Lee Del Vecchio is often wrong, and he was wrong again when he said that Alabama State was eligible for the NCAA tournament. Apparently, he got that information from the Sporting News, who was also wrong. I don't know who's more wrong, the Sporting News or Lee, but they're both wrong. Alabama State is not eligible for the for this. Well, I guess are they going to play in the SWAC tournament? But they're not eligible for the NCAA.
They're not eligible for the NCAA. I don't have information yet as to whether or not the SWAC is going to use the same format they used last year and let all 10 teams play, or if they're going to tell Alabama State and Southern to stay home this year.
Which they should. But
yeah, in Lee's defense a little bit, although it's very difficult for me to ever defend Lee, he did get it from the Sporting News. The Sporting News reported that in June of this year, Alabama State resubmitted their APR data to the NCAA, who reconsidered and let them off the hook. The fact is, that is what Alabama State did last June, because they were supposed to be on the ban list last year. Apparently, the Sporting News looked at the wrong year's data and passed it on to Lee, who then reported it to all of us. But no, Alabama State will not be in the NCAA tournament this year unless something else strange really happens here and they somehow get another reprieve.
Right.
But the other order of business from last night, David, you mentioned it briefly. How about those Christian brothers?
Wow, and I still haven't watched the game. Full disclosure, it is up on Memphis's website. I was following it a little bit, but I just didn't pull it up. And again, we talked about exhibition games in our earlier podcast from earlier in the week with Kyle. A lot of schools take different approaches. It's not unusual for a team to go to their weaknesses, and they're just going to work on what they don't feel they're good at. And when they do that for an entire game, it increases the chances of them losing or at least not looking very good. And we've seen good teams and highly ranked teams that lose exhibitions games before because that's the approach they decided to take. I believe Syracuse lost to a Division III school. Is Lemoyne 2 or 3?
I believe they're a Division III school. Yes,
Okay. Well, they lost to them and then went on to win their next 20. But the reason they lost, that game I actually did watch, was because they weren't doing anything they were actually good at. They were doing the things they were bad at.
they played
Uh,
man-to-man defense that game.
right. Which is
Jim Bam doesn't know what man-to-man defense is. So
right. So, and last night, and again, I haven't watched it, but it's my understanding that that was not the approach Memphis took. They just went out there and lost. And I don't know that much about. I mean, I know Christian Brothers is located in the city of Memphis, and that they have a team. That's about it. I don't know how good they typically are, or they're expected to be this year. But I mean, it doesn't count. But at the same time, it's not the best indicator for a team that I have always believed to be overrated anyway. They get Wichita State in 5 days. Wichita State. I know we're all starting out at zero here. But I think it's safe to probably hypothesize that Wichita State is a little bit better than Christian Brothers.
probably just slightly.
Yeah.
Uh, One other order of business before we get into the meat of things, I just wanted to point out for everybody that is a fan of the website that we have done a few redesigns on the site. The bar across the top with the various different options, we now have a few new things up there, including a conference tournament page that was going to be filled out pretty soon. The live video streaming guide that I posted earlier today now has its own page, so if you're a
Yes.
fan of any team in the world, you can go ahead and look up the conference, and you can find out from that guide how to watch the streaming. Some schools still don't have it. Some conferences still insist that they want to charge for their sites, which is ridiculous. Conference USA, but
Yes, it is.
we do have two conferences that have added streaming video this year. The Southern and the WAC have added full streaming free video, which will be lots more games to watch for those of us that sit up at 1 o'clock in the morning and watch bad basketball.
And that is definitely us.
We also have a bracketology page, where we're going to be updating our current projected brackets all season long. It had until today the bracket that we put together last week or so based on the media polls. It's now been updated for what we're about to do tonight.
Yeah, it is our own. And again, for those that are, I understand that this site is getting a lot of traffic now that it probably hasn't gone before or gotten before. We had kind of a soft launch a while ago. We're being more aggressive with it now. So if you're seeing us for the first time, welcome. We did a show, I guess it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and all we did was project what the NCAA tournament would look like if the preseason media day polls, so all the preseason favorites to win the conferences from media days, and the preseason coaches poll played out. What we're going to show you here in a few minutes is our own preseason poll. Chad, one of the hardest working people. I don't like Chad too much, but I must admit he has been working incredibly hard. All of his conference previews, his preseason bracket. Basically, he has given you everything you need to know about college basketball and none of the things you don't. And I mean, you need to know streaming, you need to know previews, conference tournaments, we'll get that up, but you don't need to know anything else. So he's provided that. I must say, Chad, we'll see it here in a second, but there are some surprises.
Yeah, there are. Well, again, these are. If you've been reading my conference previews, these are based right off of the order that the teams made it in are very similar to those conference previews. Obviously, I had to get the field down to 68, so there are a few teams that I had projected right as a bubble team in the previews that did not actually make the field. And when we're done, I'll go over what teams I just barely missed out on making the field. There's about 8 of them that did not. But we can go through that. But one last order of business, David, we have adopted a team this year.
Yes, it is New Jersey Tech. I believe their classification is NJIT. And they're kind of a fascinating story. This is something we're kind of going to kind of do for fun. It's again for under the radar. We talk about teams that we feel are good and relevant, but that aren't getting the proper attention. In some cases, they may be good enough to play their way onto or even inside the bubble and be in the NCAA tournament picture. In some cases, we stop talking about teams because they play their way onto the radar by cracking the top 25, and then we've got our other teams that you know maybe can't get in at large but are still good and could do some damage in the NCAA tournament. Like we had Mercer was a team we followed last year. SFA was a team we followed pretty closely, although they didn't get in. Green Bay and La Tech, they were teams we followed. And we've decided to follow NJIT because they are in one of the more unique situations that any other college basketball team has ever been in. They recently transitioned up. A little help here. When did they start transitioning?
Yeah,
Uh,
NJIT NJIT started their transition to Division One in 2007. The four-year
so
transition was '07 through 2010.
okay, so the 06-07 season or the 07-08 season?
Well, it was the '06-'07 season was their first season
Okay,
of transition when they went 5-24 that year.
which
Oh,
was, and it's worth pointing out, their last year of Division Two, they posted a losing record, so they were under a lot of criticism. They actually got a decent amount of press about how they weren't transitioning up to be competitive. They just wanted to go and be on the receiving end of bye games, and that's all they cared about. Weren't in a conference, anything like that. So to win just 5 games in transitional teams, it is a rough process. You're on probation for 4 years. Your first year, especially, you're probably using players that didn't anticipate playing at the D1 level and aren't really capable of playing at the D1 level, to be honest. So even though they won 5, that's more than Savannah State won. That's more than Longwood won. That's more than IUPUI won. I think their first year. So not bad.
right. Second year, 0-29.
That's bad.
Third year, 1-30.
So okay, so we're in 3 years into transition, and in my puppet math here tells me that they have posted a record of 6-73. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, that would be correct.
Oh, wow.
The following year, beginning in
6-83. Wow,
yeah,
wow.
6-83. Jim Engels took over as head coach of that 1-30 season. Promptly turned it around as they entered the Great West Conference for its 4 years of existence. Went from 10-21 in 2010 season up to 15-15, 15-17 in 2012, and then 2 years ago, 2013, they went 16-13 overall, and most importantly, they were the final ever Great West Conference regular season champions. They did not win the conference tournament, but they did win the regular season title there.
Right. So
Going
not a
6-2
great,
in the conference.
not setting the world on fire, but they this has been their path. They were a transitional team that had a losing record as a Division II team. They posted a record of 6-83 their first 3 years going through the transitional process. From there, they get off of the probation, the 4-year transitional, and they get into a conference, but it's the only conference in the country that isn't an automatic qualifier. That conference folds, and now they're independent again. They're eligible for the NCAA tournament. They'll have to get in as an at-large, but they're not in a conference. They were flirting with the America East. Were they flirting with the Northeast as well?
No, they wanted to be in the America East, and that's really what they were pushing for last year.
Yeah.
It has not happened. I think they also reached out to the Metro Atlantic, who I don't think was very interested in them either.
Right.
The Northeast, maybe we've discussed maybe some conference like the ASUN or the Big South might be interested in expanding up north a little bit just to get the members, or the Summit League expanding east. But
right. So again, they haven't had an easy road, and we've decided that it takes a lot of guts to get out there and play. And although they haven't done much, they haven't had many things go their way. They're not in a conference, so we're going to be following them rather closely this year as part of the Under the Radar, previewing their upcoming games. We'll get to that in a second, but that's what we're doing with NJIT.
right, and NJIT, if you read I did write up a preview of them along with the conference previews. They do return a couple of players, the top 2 players, Damon Lynn, Terrence Smith from last year. They only were a few games under 500. I don't see any reason why this team can't be a few games over 500 this year. If that's the case, certainly not the NCAA is not going to be interested in them, but a CIT bid is definitely a possibility here. I mean, the CIT has taken teams that were just a few games over 500 from these very small, either small conferences or I think Bakersfield made the CIT 1 year as an independent. I think that was our last independent to ever get a postseason bid. So NJIT could be in the postseason this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, David, with that, I think we want to turn to our bracket. This is
Yes.
our current bracket. We're going to put the whole bracket right up on the screen. If we can pull this off here, and David, you can lock onto my screen here, we can
Yeah.
possibly do this. Um,
We did this in rehearsal. We can do
yes.
this. We can do. Wait, something's happening.
All right. So, David, if we can lock onto my screen there.
Yeah, and there it is, in all its glory. And again, this is Chad's bracket. For those of you that were with us last year, and I know there probably weren't many of you, what we typically do, and we'll start doing this, we're going to have a new bracket every week. But what we're going to start doing in mid to late January or so is that we're actually going to go through it line by line and build it. So what you'll see is literally just a blank bracket, and you'll see us put the ones in, then the twos, then the threes, and then just filling it out exactly the way the NCAA tournament does it. But for now, there's just no reason to do that this early in the year because there's so many uncertainties. Admittedly, we are kind of throwing darts here. Um, it's what I call the 2/3 rule, or the 1/3 rule. Like in the top 25 right now, there's probably about 8 or 9 teams that won't make the field at all, and about 12 or 13 that won't finish the year in the top 25. That's typical of any season. So again, we're just kind of guessing here. Having said that, pretty much chalk on the one line there, Chad. Kentucky, Kansas, Arizona, whiskey. Twos. You really like this North Carolina team. I know the media likes them. I could see them kind of struggling this year, largely because Roy Williams is coaching.
Well, this was one of my biggest debates for when I did the two line here was what do I do with this Carolina team? I think talent wise, they are definitely capable of making that 2 seed line, maybe even making a 1 seed line. But there is all the other nonsense that's going around in the program. So for the purpose of my previews and for the purpose of this, I kind of assume that hey, they're going to figure things out and they're going to play up to the talent level that they have. But I could absolutely see everything that's going on around this program making everything fall flat on their faces, and so they're sitting there as a 9 seed, 10 seed, maybe even not making the field. But I don't know that I'll go
Right.
that far. But
Yeah.
another team that I do have on the two line here, a lot higher than the coaches polls, is this SMU team.
That is high. I like SMU. I don't know if I like them that much though. Wow.
And as you know, SMU is one of my preseason Final Four picks. I've mentioned that previously, and I think this SMU team is going to build up a ton of wins, especially playing in that American Conference. If they're able to roll through the non-conference schedule, they're just going to have such a gaudy looking record
Yeah.
that they may end up this high. Uh, on my in the 3 seed line here, I have this Gonzaga team that I've been high on this year as well.
I really like this Gonzaga team too. I'm a little surprised. I know they're ranked that high. I know the consensus thinks they're going to be that high. I'm a little surprised you think they're going to be that high, and that's the Rick Barnes' Texas Longhorns.
This was another situation where I was kind of torn between my personal feelings that I think they're overrated versus my looking at the team and saying, hey, they've really got the talent here.
Yeah.
And so when I'm doing these preseason polls, very rarely do I say the coach is going to make a significant impact downward. Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple teams I looked at that I did factor that in, including the Indiana Hoosiers, which we can maybe talk about a little later on. But
Right.
I just think that program's a complete mess now. And while I think they've got the talent there with Yogi and with Blackman to be a tournament team, I don't think they're going to be able to do that.
Well, I mean, I could see them being a legitimate Big Ten tournament team. I like their chances. Outside of that, I don't think they're in any postseason tournament. I mean, they were. I think they were bad last year, and they are tapering off.
Uh, the 4 seed line. Um, well, let's kind of do the fours and the fives together here, David,
Okay.
because I want to get your take on what I did in Omaha in the Midwest region here.
Okay, the Midwest. Well, Wichita, I really like this Wichita team,
Mhm.
and I mean, I would go so far to say that it wouldn't surprise me to see them once again up on the 2 or the 1. I mean, I like them, so I'm not going to say that you have them too high. This is a very, very good Wichita team. Virginia, San Diego State. Yeah, that's about. I like San Diego State a lot. I like Virginia a lot. I actually think I like all three of those more than Texas, maybe even more than Ohio State.
And
So
on
I
the
don't think
five,
you have them too high.
what I was trying to point you to, David, that was in the Midwest region, Wichita State's potential second round matchup uh,
Oh,
against the 5 seed there in Omaha.
oh, oh, that's a fun one. Oh, it just, I mean, Wichita State's got a good team. It's just so unfortunate that they're only going to make the round of 32 again. They're taking on the Fighting Tim Miles. I am huge on this Nebraska team. It is amazing that what Tim Miles has done. That's another thing you're going to find out if you are regulars of this show. Tim Miles was at North Dakota State when they were a transitional team. They won 20 games as a transitional team. That's unbelievable. He went to Colorado State, who had finished outside the RPI top 250, I think, 4 years in a row, made them a tournament caliber team. And
Did we just lose the screen?
yeah, I believe we did.
Okay, we're going to try to get the screen back here. Give me
Yeah,
a second.
I mean, this is we're having major first world problems here with the bracket. But anyway, again, with Tim Miles, and then he gets to Nebraska, which was the doormat. In fact, they weren't even the doormat; they were the mat that had been stepped on and thrown away. And now he's got them, in the top 25, legitimate contenders for the Big Ten. And they signed a top 20 recruiting class yesterday, I believe. So that's a good one. Tim Miles, the Reverend.
Just Dave, my other 5 seeds were Utah, Georgetown, and Iowa State. While I try to get the bracket back up here,
Okay.
uh,
Let's see here. Okay, who were the other fives?
Utah, Georgetown, and Iowa State.
Utah, Georgetown, and Iowa State. I like this Iowa State team a lot. I mean, Fred Hoiberg, every year they've been there, they haven't had a lot of preseason accolades starting out, but they always seem to end up finishing better than where they started. And again, I could see them. I could see them doing that again.
And we should be back if you can focus it on my screen again here.
Okay. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay.
We lost it because I realized we had an error there. We had accidentally transposed BYU and Utah in the brackets, but I got that fixed up.
Okay.
So
Okay. So Utah. They had a bloated record last year. I like this Utah team. I don't like them as much as you, Lee. Everybody else seems to. I think they're in the field. I think they're even probably inside the bubble, but I'm thinking more 9-10 range. You really like this Utah team, though.
I just think they're the second best team in the Pac-12, and I'm looking at the Pac-12 as being a strong multi-bid conference here. I'm looking at the Pac-12 as being a 5-bid conference. So if we're putting 5 teams in, I got to put the second best team up there in the 5 line. Otherwise, I'm sticking everybody in the first 4.
Yeah, which would make for an interesting first 4.
Speaking of Pac-12, I have another Pac-12 team on the 6th line with Colorado joining Illinois, Louisville, and Florida State.
I like this Colorado team. That's higher than what I would have had them, but I'm not going to say you're wrong. I really like this Colorado team. Florida State, that is high. That is, you're certainly out on a limb with them in Illinois a little bit, and most people probably have Louisville a little bit higher as well.
Yeah, I think I'm way off of what I've been seeing in the media with this entire line here.
Right. Yeah.
Louisville I don't like as much because I think they're going to have trouble without Russ Smith there. This Florida State team is a team that I really like here in the ACC. I've got them picked to finish 4th in the conference behind Duke, North Carolina, Virginia. I'm very high on this team. Also, this Illinois team, I think this is the year this team breaks out, and I would not be surprised at all to see them right up here in the 5-6 seed line.
I wouldn't either. This was an Illinois team, and most people don't realize this because of the lasting impression that the NCAA tournament makes. Case in point, Villanova, who had 29 wins, was on the brink of a 1 seed, had a great year, but because they went out so early, everybody kind of forgot everything they'd done before that. This Illinois team missed the NCAA tournament, but my God, were they playing well in late February and early to mid-March. I mean, they were playing so well that I think had they beaten, was it Michigan that beat them in the conference tournament
I believe so, yes.
On a last-second shot? Had they won that game, they were they would have had a chance to play their way inside the bubble, I think. And that was, they were just so good at the end of the year. So I am actually with you on that. I like that pick. I'm not sure I would have had the balls to do it, but I respect you.
uh, David, on the 7 seed line, another team I think I have picked lower than a lot of people is the Florida Gators. I'm not that high on this team. In fact, I've
Right.
got Arkansas on the same line as them, but I have them picked third in the SEC behind Arkansas.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised you liked Arkansas that much. Again, I think Arkansas is right now one of those fringe tournament teams that could be good. The one thing about them is that for the last 3 years, they've been atrocious away from home. And not only have they been atrocious away from home, they've been atrocious away from home against teams that, quite frankly, aren't that good, like the middle and bottom of the SEC.
It's a new season, David. This is the
Yeah.
year they start winning on the road.
And if
Uh,
they do, then they'll be in there. You have Dayton pretty high as well.
I like this Dayton team. I really, I mean, I think they've got one of the best coaches in the country, and who unfortunately this might be his last season at Dayton. So,
Just getting a little. Okay, just need a drink there.
all
All
right,
right.
if you're locked on me, then nobody saw that. But
Yeah. Okay, so the eighth line here, we've got Louisiana Tech. Now, I like them a lot. I'm a little surprised you have them this high up. And one of the reasons, well, I see you have Harvard, your other team, because on our Under the Radar podcast, you had said that you had Harvard as your number one overall. Boise, you must really like this Boise team.
it really came down to it when we got to these 8, 9, and 10 lines, even to the
Yeah.
11 line. Is more of, well, Boise ends up here in the 8 line because I look at everything below them and I don't like those teams very much at all below them. So they kind of just start moving on up and up and up.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at a team like, they are. I've got, I believe, two more Mountain West teams. If you had at least one more Mountain West team, I think I have Vegas. I think that was it. Um, but I just feel that this is a Boise team that I feel is the second best team in the Mountain West. They get a win over San Diego State. Then they blow through some of the garbage at the bottom of that conference. They're going to have a bloated record again that may be enough to
Okay.
put them up in this area.
Another thing, and I know they're going to have the road wins and they're going to have the bloated record. Is Harvard going to have the credentials to be that far inside the bubble? That is, and I know you know this. Well, not that it matters. When I say first ballot team, essentially what I'm saying is that they're a top 37 team, meaning because there's 37 at large bids, and the first ballot is just voting for the 37 that are going to get in, regardless of what happens in the conference tournament. But there is no conference tournament for the Ivy, so that's irrelevant. But that is up there with the first ballot teams. You like them that much?
I think that Harvard is good enough that if suddenly the NCAA came out tomorrow and said, Ivy League, you don't get an automatic bid anymore.
Yeah.
That they're going to have no trouble getting in the field. This is a loaded team. They have pretty much everybody back from last year. They've got a game against UMass coming up. They've got a game at Vermont. They've got a game at Virginia. They've got a game at Arizona State. They have the game at Boston College. I believe they play UConn again this year.
They've been playing them.
No,
Let me see.
I don't see them playing UConn this year.
Okay.
But and they're also
But
at
yeah,
Grand Canyon, one of our favorite teams. I mean,
I actually like Grand Canyon. Yeah. If they go out to Grand Canyon, because they're at Grand Canyon, aren't
at Grand Canyon, that's a
that's
significant.
that's a decent road win, really. I mean, so all right, but yeah, I mean, again, we said there were some surprises. Now, on we lost. Oh, crap. Oh, we lost Chad. Okay. Let's see if we can get him back. Okay, here he comes. He's back. Chad, what are you doing? I can't push it. Where is? Oh,
Okay.
oh, oh,
Okay. I just learned that closing the window for the video is not the right way to close out Harvard's schedule. So we will not be doing that again.
wow. All right. And that was scary. All right. Get back to the.
All right, but we are back, and I think I got the screen back up again as well.
This happens to us a lot, by the way.
Little technical difficulties, but we're back. And
Right.
what we were talking about, About the 9 seed line.
The nine. One of the ones I'm surprised to see here, and again, this is somebody I like this team a lot. I think they're inside the bubble. I do think that nine is about their ceiling. At least right now. I wouldn't guess that they'd be any better than that, and that's the Miami Hurricanes.
Oh, really? I thought you were going to be mentioning West Virginia here because I
No,
thought.
no, I really like this West Virginia team.
Okay.
Yeah, I know not. I mean, I know the rest of the media isn't big on them, but I like them a lot. But Miami, I mean, I agree with it. I think they're 9-10 range. I mean, I think they're inside the bubble. I don't think they're much higher than this at the end of the year. Like, if I had to guess, are they going to be better or worse than this? I would guess worse. But
Okay,
I
fair
do think
enough.
they're in. Yeah,
How about a team I have on the 10 seed line here? Let's talk about Syracuse.
that is low.
You,
That's
th- you,
real
th-
low.
you think I'm because I honestly I don't like the Syracuse team this year. I just think that they lost so much off of last year's team. Uh,
Right,
I think that this is could be one of Boeheim's biggest struggles this season. And plus, you got all kinds of off court stuff going on up there to distract them. So
right. I mean, we've seen Syracuse struggle before. I mean, I assume they're playing. They're going to rampage through the bakery and eat up all the cupcakes in the out of conference season. Or do they have any heavyweights out of conference? They normally have at least one or two.
yeah, I will pull up their schedule here 1 second as long as I don't end up closing out
Yeah,
the webcast screen again.
right.
Um,
Okay,
And
so
as we do that, hopefully getting Syracuse's schedule. Okay, Syracuse non-conference schedule where Jim Boeheim hates to leave the state of New York. He is actually going to Michigan, but that's part of the ACC Big Ten Challenge.
right.
Uh, Only other non-conference game outside of New York is they go to Villanova. Uh,
That's a good one. Well, Michigan and Nova, it could be better, but that's not horrible. Do they have anybody else of note?
all other non-conference games are at home. One of them is against Cal.
That's not
Uh,
bad.
Oh, actually, that's a neutral court game. That might be in. I got to figure out where that game is actually going to be played. They also play St. John's at home, Louisiana
Yeah.
Tech at home, Long Beach at home, Kennesaw,
Okay.
Hampton, Holy Cross, Loyola.
Well, they're playing 4 or 5 out of conference teams with a pulse, so for Syracuse, that's pretty good. We're going to learn a lot about them. Like you said, they did lose a lot. A team I am
That
curious.
Syracuse game is in the 2K Sports Classic.
Okay,
That's actually the semifinal game. They would then get the winner of Texas and Iowa in the championship game of that little tournament.
got you. I want to get your take on George Washington because I like them. I just have way more questions than answers about them right now.
GW here. I've got them. I've got them right now as their third best team in the A10.
Hmm.
They were the last eight. I only put three A10 teams in this field. Uh, they've got some good recruits. They had some health issues last year, if I believe. Some of
Yeah,
these
they
guys that are
did.
coming back, and if everybody's healthy and able to play, there's no reason that they won't. They could contend for the conference championship, especially because we know Shaka Smart has. I heard this the other day. Shaka Smart has never won a conference regular season title. Is that true?
Uh, the Final
Outright.
Four year they were fourth, I believe,
Yeah,
and that was his second year coaching, or was it his?
right. So I think that is true. I don't think he's ever
Yeah,
won a
because
regular season conference championship, which is
right.
amazing.
Yeah, I know. They didn't win it. Who won it last? Oh, was it who won it last year?
St. Louis won it last year, didn't they?
Yeah, I guess they did. Okay. Speaking of,
Yeah, we look at Savage had with health issues and McDonald who had hip surgery. These guys are healthy. Uh, I think George Washington is a tournament team.
right. I have to ask. It's just one of those things when you're proofreading here, looking at the 11 line. If your notes were correct, and you are aware of who Tulsa's head coach is.
I am aware of who's Tulsa's head coach is. This, however, is still Danny Manning's entire team here. And a
Yeah.
team that Danny Manning put into the NCAA tournament. They're now all a year older, a year more experienced. And I think that despite this head coach, yes, that Tulsa gets one more bid. By next season, not going to be looking quite as good, though.
Right. I like this Toledo. Well, I like both these teams, Toledo and Green Bay. I would not be at all surprised to see them on the 11 line. The issue that I think they're both going to have is just getting their resume on paper up to what it needs to be inside the bubble. Where is your bubble? Is it the 13, isn't it?
But yeah,
Yeah.
all the 12 seeds were above the bubble. There's
Yeah.
one, the very last bubble spot was on the 13 line.
Okay. So I mean, they're a good line inside the bubble, Toledo and Green Bay, which indicates that they would get in if they ended up needing it at large bid. Um,
One thing I'll note here, also on this 11 line, actually BYU would have been on the 11 line.
oh, okay.
Because of the BYU rules, I had to move them down to the 12 line so they could play on a Thursday Saturday site. Uh,
Mhm.
so BYU, I think, is right in that 11 seed range as well.
Okay, and this one's kind of. Are you sure about Auburn, or are they kind of a wild card for you?
I'm sure about Auburn. I really like. I mean, it's a team full of transfers, but between Casey Ross Miller, who was famously instigated that fight against Utah Valley for New Mexico State last year, uh, and so they got a little spunk on the team too, a little fight in
Right,
them. That we know.
right.
They got a couple other transfers coming in. They got Simeon Bowers, who is a junior, probably the best junior college transfer in the country. This coming in this year. I think this Auburn team is going to be in the tournament.
Okay, and I guess we're on to the 12. UTEP. I get why everyone's big on them. I'm just not that big on them myself. BYU, every bracketologist is nightmare because of the whole bracketing rules of them not being on Sunday. You got a team. I noticed Evansville had a losing record last year, and although they're right on your bubble, so you think that they could rise that high?
Yeah, Evansville was the last team I had in before the first four, so they're just barely making it in. Obviously, Wichita State I have in as the automatic bid qualifier from the Missouri Valley. I know you like Northern Iowa better. We had this debate on the
Yeah.
last Under the Radar podcast we did about a week ago, but I really think that this Evansville team is the surprise team from the Missouri Valley this year.
Okay. And do they have to beat Wichita once to get in, or are they going to be good enough without that bid?
I think if they sweep Northern Iowa and run through the rest of the conference and finish with maybe three conference losses, but two of them are to Wichita, yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're going to have to beat Wichita, especially because they're probably going to pay Wichita three times with the conference tournament. Uh,
Right.
so yeah, I think they probably do have to beat them one out of those three.
Right. And
Uh,
then your first four.
Pittsburgh and Stanford is the first game here on the 12 line.
Yeah.
I'm not that crazy about this Pitt team, but I think they sneak in. Stanford is the other team. Again, my last team in out of the Pac-12 there.
Yeah. And then you liked LSU. I have to ask because there's two teams that. Well, there's one team that a lot of people seem to be big on, and I'm not sure why, and that's Texas A&M. I don't like them as much as LSU, and to be honest, I don't like them as much as Georgia.
I was not aware that a lot of other people were big on Texas A&M. I picked Texas A&M to finish eighth in the conference, and I thought
Okay.
that I was picking them high
Right.
because I thought
I
that
just.
they were good enough to be a lot better than I expected than people expected to be. But I thought that I thought I was picking them high at eight. So I'll put it
Yeah.
that way. Uh,
Um. But again, so yeah, I'm not getting that. Where did you pick Georgia? Were they
uh,
close or?
Honestly, I have Georgia ranked ninth in the conference. I
Okay.
know you like this Georgia team a
It's
lot,
more of a
and
hunch than it is.
and I could see this down through the top nine teams in the SEC. I think any one of those top nine could be this last team that sneaks on up.
Mhm.
But LSU is the team that I chose as the fourth SEC team that sneaks in there and grabs that last bid.
All right, and it is I don't know who's last, LSU or Iowa, but we've talked about LSU. Iowa, how do you see their season going? Do you see them rising all the way up into the top 10 and then slowly tapering off all the way down back onto the bubble as they did last year?
Uh, I think they're going to stay right around the bubble all season.
Okay.
I don't think they're as good as they were early last year. I don't think they're as bad as they were at the end of last year.
Okay.
Actually, just to go via my S curve, actually, I had Iowa third from the end. Stanford and LSU were my last two teams in. I had to
Okay.
make a switch there of two teams because of one of the bracketing rules. Something fell apart. I think it was, well, Iowa couldn't play Nebraska in the second
Oh,
round,
that's
so that's why
yeah.
Iowa had to get moved down a slot and Stanford up. Uh,
Right.
then just before we go on to the
Yeah.
rest of the 13 line, these are the teams that did not quite make the field for me in order. The first team I had out was California, another Pac-12 team. I then had
But we
Missouri.
that would make 2 years in a row of being so. Wow. Congrats to them.
Yeah, Missouri I
Good thing
had right
Seth
there.
Greenberg isn't coaching. Wow.
I
Okay.
had Missouri. I had Minnesota, Kansas State. I have Virginia Tech on my list. I just think that that's a team out of the ACC that could surprise and could sneak into the bubble conversation at the end. So I had them on the list, but not in. Arizona State, Wyoming was my fourth team that I looked at out of the Mountain West.
Wow.
I,
Really.
I like this Wyoming team. I don't know that I had room for them, but if somebody else like Boise or UNLV slips up, there might be room for them to sneak in.
Hmm.
And Ole Miss, I also took a look at Ole Miss out of the SEC because I just have a hunch with Marshall Henderson gone, there might be room for everybody else to finally start playing better.
Um, Another team that I kind of like. Now I know they have a lot of new players, but I'm a huge fan of Ed Cooley. I thought he did really well with Providence last year, and they would have done even better had it not been for all of their roster issues. With I think they had eligibility issues and injury issues. Was Providence anywhere on your radar, or did you not even consider them?
Providence was. I have Providence picked. Let's see here. I have them picked fourth in the Big East. So they were,
Yeah.
and I put three Big East teams in. They would have been the next team up out of the Big East for me. Uh, I didn't have St. John's anywhere. I think I actually picked St. John's fifth in the Big East, but I've seen a
Okay.
few publications that really like the St. John's team, and I still think they're completely insane. But
Right. Okay. So
so quickly, just run through the rest of the teams are just the automatic bid qualifiers.
right. And this is
Steve,
the under the normally we go bottoms up, but I guess we'll just keep going.
okay.
13. Yeah.
13
Well, it's up to
line,
you. Yeah.
Stephen F. Austin, who obviously beat VCU and has pretty much the same team back this year.
Yeah.
Murray State, I think we both really like out of the Ohio Valley, and Georgia
Yeah.
State out of the Sun Belt.
Those are three really, really good teams. In on the court, they're great. I mean, I think they're as good or better than a lot of your 12 line, and maybe even a team or two on the 11 line. But well, I don't. But the problem with them, and this is and you run in this with the selection committee. I don't know if they're going to have the credentials to be seated any better than 13th.
Right.
I mean, can these SFA has a few games really early on. They go to Xavier. I want to say they go to Memphis. But how good is that going to end up being? They just lost to Christian Brothers, and I think they have one or two others. Murray goes to Xavier, and that's really it. They go to Houston tomorrow night, I believe. And Houston's not great, but it is one of the better teams that Murray plays. So even with as few as three losses, can you really put an SFA or a Murray any higher than a 13?
Right. And the same with Georgia State. I mean, Georgia
Yeah.
State's one of the best things they've got going for them is they're playing Green Bay and they're playing them twice. So if
Yeah.
they sweep that series, then you turn around and say, well, how can I have Green Bay on the 11 line
Right.
and Georgia State on the 13? Right now, I'm assuming it's going to be a split, and that's why I've got those teams right there.
Right.
14 line, we've got New Mexico State, UC Santa Barbara, Wofford, and Iona.
Which is a pretty big drop off from the 13s, I think.
Very big drop off.
Yeah, I could see the 13s being bubble caliber teams or better, regardless of what their paper is. The 14s, they need the automatic.
Right. And the same with the 15 line, obviously Oral Roberts, Gulf Coast,
Yeah.
Hartford, and American.
I notice there is a team in the summit that I think we should mention that isn't on your list, and you'll understand why. Denver has the talent to be 10, 9 seed caliber or better, but they just can't seem to pull it together. They were hugely disappointing last year. I mean, a lot of people are picking them. They're a lot of people's dark horse to even get inside the bubble, but this is just a team that lets you down a lot.
And this is one of those rare situations where I looked at things outside the talent on the roster to drop a team down. I can't in my right mind say that Denver's going to win the Summit League after what they've done the last 2 years,
Right.
where I thought they were. We started last season thinking that the Summit League was a two-bid league with North
Yeah.
Dakota State and Denver, and it ended up being that Denver wasn't even a factor in the conference. It was Fort Wayne that was the second best team.
Right. Now, where did you have Fort Wayne? Because a lot of people, I know they underwent a coaching change, but I guess you don't like them as much as Oral Roberts.
I picked them third in the conference. I did pick Denver second, uh,
Okay.
just because I wasn't going to knock them out all the way down. Although I would not be surprised if they finished fifth or sixth. Fort Wayne I have third, but I think it could be a three-team race between those three teams
Mhm.
all season.
Okay, and then the 16. Oh boy,
The,
Eastern.
the,
What? Yeah.
yeah, Eastern Washington and Northeastern are the two that avoid the first four there.
Right.
Uh,
And Eastern Washington is interesting because you will notice that it is not Montana and that it is not Weber State. It's
uh,
been a while.
Well, Weaver State should be right there in the battle for the Big Sky. Wayne Tinkle has gone from Montana. They lost a lot of players. I think that Montana is going to not only slide back in the pack this year, but they may be back there for a few years. Uh,
Right.
Sacramento State's another team that I think is moving up in that conference. Northern Arizona is a team that's up there near the top of that conference.
Hmm.
Finally, the first four teams: Central Connecticut. Ham is actually
Yeah.
Hampton. That's a little cut off there.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, that is Hampton. Out of and again, you're going against a little bit. I believe NC Central is who a lot of people like. They won the league last year, and they were actually all the way up on the 14 line. Which nothing against the MEAC, you don't really see teams up on the 14 line from the MEAC very often. And
No, yeah. I actually looked at the Hampton team. I like their backcourt. Central, I like their front court. And in the end, I think guard play is going to win out in a conference like the MEAC, and that's why I went with Hampton.
yeah,
That's very simple. That was pretty much what the deciding factor for me was. Uh,
yeah. Now
Radford,
Central
Alcorn
Connecticut.
State are the
Oh,
last two
okay.
teams.
And just real quick, Central Connecticut is kind of against the grain as well. There's a lot of love for St. Francis College in Brooklyn, and I'm not really seeing why. I don't get why that's who everyone seems to think is going to run away with that league. I like the Central Connecticut team. I'm with you on that one.
I think it's a five-team battle here in the Northeast. I think there's five teams that could win it. My
Yeah.
personal pick, I have St. Francis out of Brooklyn, fifth of those five teams.
Yeah.
Central Connecticut, I love on paper. The only problem is their star player Vidal Scott. I believe he beat up his girlfriend. He's got arrested, and I don't know. Still haven't heard exactly what his status is for the season.
Right.
Whether there's a chance he could play. If he's not going to play, if he's not going to be back with the team by the time conference play starts, my second pick in the conference was Bryant, and that's probably who I would lean towards.
Right. And then Radford out of the Big South, and I who were we? Okay, yeah, Radford out of the Big South, and Alcorn State out of the
You could flip a coin in the SWAC. The Alabama State is by far the
the
best
best.
team in that conference.
Yeah.
Since we've now confirmed they're not eligible. I mean, Arkansas Pine Bluff, it could be Texas Southern.
Hmm.
I went with Alcorn State. Can I tell you exactly why? I just
It's
kind of like them a little better than anything. They've got some more experience than some of the other teams out there. They're a fairly
right.
deep team, and that's who I went with.
Now again, is Coastal the Big South favorite, or is it Radford from
Uh,
Media Day?
as far as media day, Coastal Carolina was a favorite, and it's tough
Okay.
to go with the Radford pick here because Radford would have to win the automatic bid on Coastal's home floor because Coastal
Yeah.
gets to host the conference tournament. Uh, that
Right.
being said, this Radford team won 22 games last year, and virtually everybody is back, and
Okay.
that's why I went with them.
All right. So there you have it, our preseason bracket. So we'll
Okay,
see how it goes. We'll be updating it every week or so.
am
And
I
again,
back? All
yeah,
right,
you're
I'm
back.
back. Okay.
You're back. So we'll be on next week with another one, and maybe like if NJIT goes into St. John's, maybe they'll be in it.
Right.
So
I think we want to do one more quick thing before we're done here because this is
yeah,
normally our under the radar segment. We want to just take a quick look at some of the under the radar games coming up over the next few days. So as we transition back from above back to under the radar again, where we should have been to begin with.
right.
And Dave, we already mentioned the season starts at 11 a.m. tomorrow, 8 a.m. Pacific time.
Yes.
Texas Southern at Eastern Washington, stealing the thunder from Eastern Michigan, who had traditionally had started the season.
Right,
Uh,
for the last 3 or 4 years, and I guess they did it at noon. But it's yeah, it's 11 o'clock Eastern time, and like you said, it's 8 a.m. local time. So really getting up early there, and it's between two teams that, albeit aren't anywhere close to the bubble, but it's two teams that are going to be towards the top of their conferences. So it is an interesting game in that regard, and whoever wins it is leading the nation for at least a couple of hours.
exactly. A couple other games that did interest me a little bit tomorrow. These are some games involving some of these underrated teams against more high-profile teams. This American at Temple game, that's a little upset alert there. I
It
like this
is,
American
and
team.
yeah, I mean Temple is trying to rebound from a bad season last year. I mean, especially by their standards after getting the NCAA tournament as a regular team. And this American team is, you picked them to win the Patriot. They're the consensus favorite to win the Patriot. American's good. They have a lot of players back. Are they good enough to win a road game against of this caliber against one of the lower rated teams in the American? I would think so. That's a good one.
On the other end of things, you have another preseason favorite, UC Santa Barbara out of the Big West. They're at Kansas. That's a little too much of a task, though.
Yeah. I like this Santa Barbara team. I actually have Irvine winning the Big West. I know you have Santa Barbara, but either way, they're kind of swinging over their heads in that one.
Right. Another game of note, well, obviously the NJIT St. John's game, we already talked about that.
Yeah.
New Mexico State at Wichita State, that's the team that, New Mexico State, that we believe will at least get the automatic bid out of the whack with Grand Canyon ineligible. Probably too much to go to Wichita, though, and win.
Yeah, automatic bid, and winning a game like that tomorrow, suddenly you might not need the automatic bid, but it's a tall order. I am, I don't think people. I think Wichita's getting respect, but this is a team that did not lose a game last year, with the exception of a 1 point buzzer beater against the national runner-up. Who was playing really well at the time. They have so many people back. This is such a good Wichita
Oh,
team.
but except for Clee Anthony early, so that's.
Yeah, except for early. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Uh, but I mean Van Vliet is back, so yeah, they've got a lot of pieces back. I don't think they're as good as last year, but I do think they're a very good team. I'd agree with you. Also tomorrow we have, for those people who are fans of brackets and tournaments, our first bracketed event of the year it starts tomorrow. It's the All Military Classic. Air Force and Army is the nightcap. Citadel and VMI is this first semifinal.
Is that add-on? Because I know it alternates among the four.
It's going to be at Army this year,
Okay.
and then coming up on Sunday they'll have the third place of the championship game of that. So the first bracketed event of this season will be going on tomorrow.
Yeah.
We also have
One of those, both Air Force and Army, I think, and I think you agree with me, both of those teams are probably going to be better than what many are speculating. I don't think they're tournament teams, not even close, or bubble teams, but that's a good game to watch.
I think that'll be an excellent game to watch. It is going to. I think the Patriot League will be streaming that game, so you should be able to watch that one. Another slightly interesting game here. This is a game played at Loyola Marymount, but Boise State against San Diego. And Loyola Marymount's running a little four-team event. It's not bracketed, but it's two games in 2 days, Friday and Saturday. So Boise State and San Diego, kind of a little slightly interesting game for them.
I like that. I like San Diego because of the experience they have on that team. It was a team that wasn't consistent last year, but did look really good at times. If Boise is the 9 seed that you think they are, this is the kind of game that they need to win. Like a neutral floor game against a decent team. They need
and then they play Loyola Marymount the next day as the other half of that event. Going into Sunday, a couple other interesting under-the-radar games. There's a Northern Arizona at Toledo game on Sunday afternoon. One of the top teams of the Big Sky at the top team in the MAC. St. Peter's is at Hartford. That's one of the top teams of the Metro Atlantic. I really like the St. Peter's team at our pick for the America East.
Yeah.
And Fordham's at Penn State as they begin their quest for the NCAA tournament bid.
I will say, I think that you're crazy. I really do. But if they win at Penn State, they'll at least have my attention. One, and I realize this is sort of an under versus over. St. Francis College, the everyone's favorite out of the Northeast, is going to Georgetown. I don't know. We'll see how they do there. Georgetown has a tendency to overlook teams like that, so it might be worth watching. Is that Sunday or Saturday, Chad?
I believe that game is Saturday.
Yeah.
Yes, that game is Saturday. Yeah, I skipped that one.
Yeah, and I mean I will no longer call them SFNY. That's how I refer to them, but apparently they really don't like it. It's St. Francis College.
Or
So,
St. Francis Brooklyn is
or
acceptable
St.
as
Francis
well.
Road. Okay, yeah.
All right. Going into Monday, David, start with a big game here, 6 o'clock Monday evening. Mike Davis returns to Indiana. So we have a battle in this game. Texas Southern at Indiana. Two former Indiana head coaches going up against each other. Oh,
Oh God, yes. Oh yes. It won't be a good game, but it'll be tremendous theater. I mean, we need to dispatch Mr. Delvecchio to that if we can get him there with his iPad. It'll be incredible.
uh, the we also have NJIT plays again Monday night. They'll be hosting Maine, a very winnable game for our team here.
Right. And again, I mean, I'm curious to see what they do tomorrow against the Johnnies. They win that one. I mean, you know, when we start putting those merit rankings together, they might land in our bracket, but we'll see.
Utah Valley, our second, I think one of the top teams out of the WAC, is at Eastern Washington, our pick out of the Big Sky. I think could be an entertaining game Monday night. And
Yeah.
also Monday night, David, Belmont at Lipscomb.
Yeah, is that the Boulevard? What did
Battle
they
of the
call it?
Boulevard, yep.
No, I know the Boulevard. Yeah, I'm so glad they kept that rivalry going. You know, even though they're not in the same conference anymore, they even play twice, don't they?
I believe they play twice. I'll confirm if
Yeah.
they do play twice today. But these teams, how far apart are they? About walking distance, I
Yeah,
think.
it's about walking distance. Yeah, I mean they're pretty close, and it is a pretty good rivalry of that size. And for the fact that they're playing early, there's another. I mean, they're not under the radar rivals, but there's another. I won't mention it, but when one of the teams moved conferences, they decided to not keep it going.
Anyhow, as we go back to Belmont and Lipscomb and
Yeah,
away from Missouri and Kansas, they do play choices here. The second game will be November 24th on Belmont's home court. This first one is on Lipscomb's home court. So
yeah,
I enjoy the fact that they are playing choice.
right. And I just enjoy the fact that they get the concept that a rivalry is a good thing for both schools. So you know, to embrace it and keep it going.
And for everybody who is an insomniac, beginning Monday night and is the 24-hour plus tip-off marathon. We've got games Monday night, 1 a.m. Auburn at Colorado, 3 a.m. New Mexico State at St. Mary's, 5 a.m. High Point at Hawaii, and then 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. Tuesday morning. We actually have a pair of very good under-the-radar games
Very
here.
good games.
Iona at Wofford, our pick out
That's
of the Metro Atlantic, at our pick out of the SoCon.
Yeah, and I don't know if Iona has what it takes to get onto the bubble. And part of that is because Tim Kluse is the coach. Albeit he has done better than I thought he would. They still have a tendency to lose games in spectacular, bizarre fashion every now and then. But that's a good one. That Iona Wofford game.
And then right after that, 9 a.m., Northern Iowa at Stephen F. Austin.
I am really, really looking forward to that. SFA needs it. Oh man, do they need it?
Well, Northern Iowa could use it too.
Right, yeah. That really is, and this is what I love about college basketball. That is a very high stakes game for both of those teams.
I mean, these are bracket busters-esque games being played November 18th.
They are, yeah,
with those two games.
yeah,
We have also a couple other games. Toledo's at VCU and another very good game on Tuesday evening.
yeah. I think Toledo's a little overmatched. I really like them. I know you have them on the 11 line, but again, very high stakes. If they go to VCU and win, then I mean that is a huge bonus on their resume. That's how you get inside the bubble.
Two more games here, David, quickly for Tuesday. Richmond is at Old Dominion. That's a
Old
good little.
Another rivalry that has been kept going. It's not quite the same now that it's not a conference game, and ever since Old Dominion, I mean, they had the thing with was it Blaine Taylor?
Right.
kind of unfortunate there. But Jeff Jones is the coach there, and he's doing pretty well. So that should be a fun one. VCU going to ODU, yeah.
Richmond go to ODU.
Oh, I'm sorry, Richmond going to ODU.
I'm also interested in a game here Tuesday evening, Chattanooga at Butler. This Butler team,
Yes.
I like this Chattanooga team. I think they're the second best team in that SoCon there.
Hmm.
And this Butler team, I don't know what to make of them this year. They could be anywhere. They could
Right.
finish first or last in the Big East, as far as I know.
Yeah, and I believe is it Chris Holt? I'm butchering his name. Chris Holtman, is he the coach?
Yes.
Yes, and he did. Again, we talked about this before. He did a tremendous job when he was at Gardner Webb. It was, a 10-mile style turnaround when going from a 5 overall Div 1 wins to 20 plus in just 2 years or 3 years, and being one of the better teams in the Big South. I thought that he was way more qualified to be the head coach than Brandon Miller was when he arrived at Butler, and I thought it was very bizarre that he would leave Gardner Webb as a head coach to go to Butler as an assistant, especially when he was on so many other people's radars to be a head coach. He takes over this Butler team in a very, very bizarre, unusual circumstance. I'm curious to see what they do. That's the first layer. The second layer, you want to talk about contrasting styles. I mean, this is going to be fun just to see who can get control of the game and who can do what, this Chattanooga Butler game.
This Chattanooga, their head coach is a former assistant of Shaka Smarts, and they don't
Yeah.
call it Havoc, they call it Chaos, using the CHA of Chattanooga.
Yeah.
Should be a fun game. A couple of games quickly on Wednesday, David, just because we're not going to be on again probably until next Wednesday night.
Right.
From an under radar standpoint, our NJIT team is back in action again Wednesday night. They're at Albany.
Like
Uh,
that one. I mean, I'm thinking 2-1 for NJIT. And I gotta ask you, Chad. I gotta ask you. I've alluded to this, but I'm just excited. If NJIT is 3-0, and we're putting together these merit rankings, which won't necessarily dictate the bracket, we're not just going to bracket the merit rankings, although we might. Is NJIT in our field next week?
oh, they would have a win against St. John's, and
Yeah.
they'd have two road wins. They might be very near the top of the RPI at that point.
They might. Oh, all right.
One other game, David. Army at this SFNY team. Oh, sorry, St. Francis Brooklyn team that we were just discussing.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that could be another good game. Two teams that maybe not the best team in their conferences, but right up among the top two or three of their conference.
Yeah, it is. And again, that's how you build your profile to get up to a manageable 15, 14 type seed. So, or inside the. You've got me excited about this Army team. And in fact, we were talking the other night about how dull a lot of the games appear to be tomorrow, but as I was putting together the article, it dawned on me that not all of them are terrible, and I'm actually really looking forward to this Army Air Force game tomorrow.
This Army Air Force game tomorrow. I mean, obviously there is the big game tomorrow is the Louisville Minnesota game,
Yeah,
but
Louisville Mini.
another game that kind of slipped under the radar here for a lot of people tomorrow. And talking again, going back to all the way back to tomorrow, Virginia actually has a true road game at James Madison
In
tomorrow night.
Yes, and it's great that they're doing that. Virginia is not afraid to play the local teams on equal terms. They did VCU home and home, although VCU's more on their level. I believe they've played Old Dominion home and home in the past. Now they're playing James Madison as part of a home and home. I like that. I think it's good for both teams. And here's the thing: say James Madison plays way over their heads and wins the game. Well, so what? I mean, ultimately, Virginia is good enough to where it won't be a defining moment in their season. They lost at Green Bay last year. They still ended up going for the double, getting the 1 seed. That's how they were remembered. So I like that they're stepping out and challenging themselves against some good teams from within their region. I
Yeah,
love this game.
yeah, and just look at the schedule the next few days. I noticed that Mercer has a game at Seton Hall. This is a return game from again
Yeah,
Seton Hall. Remember last year went to Mercer, played a true road game there. Another
yeah.
team that
Well,
actually went out and did it. So I gotta commend those teams for actually going out and playing those really tough non-conference under the radar teams that a lot of
right.
teams are just afraid to play.
hmm Like Louisiana Tech, who no one will play.
Uh, Anything else? Anything else you're looking forward to in the next week here, David?
Not really. Just a final thought. I mean, we're speculating and we're going off rankings and we're doing our thing, but it's all supposition, and it has to be kind of at this point to make any sense. But technically speaking, this is what's great. Everyone is starting out at 0. If the SWAC goes out there, as bad as the league appears to be, but if they go out there and they win 70, 80% of their OOC game out of conference games, they're going to be, they're going to have teams in the rankings. They're going to have teams good in doing well in the RPI. They're going to have 5, 6, 7 teams in the NCAA tournament picture.
Uh,
Everyone is starting out at 0, so no matter where you are, and I just love to watch it take shape as November progresses.
Absolutely. When you look at a conference like the SWAC, even they've probably played more road games against high quality opponents than these power
Yeah.
conferences are. And if the SWAC goes out and wins 80% of its non-conference
Oh, they're
games,
putting the whole conference in.
then you're looking at this being a 10-team conference that could put 7 teams in like the Big 12 did last year. So
Right.
obviously not going to happen, but
Right.
it
But
theoretically could.
yeah, it theoretically could, and it doesn't just fall out of the sky. That's what drives me crazy. February and March. Well, it's unfortunate that this is just a one-bid league. I mean, you hear that comment. I mean, they don't get to send more than one team to the NCAA tournament. No, the reason is because of what happened in November, December. I mean, it all starts tomorrow. We're all at 0. If the Big Sky, Big South, Patriot, if they get out there and they win, they're gonna send 2, 3, 4 teams. Everybody's at 0. So I guess that's my final thought before we get started tomorrow.
All right. Well, with that, again, we are now going about an hour here, so we're now down to 13 hours as we are here live at this moment until the tip-off of the very first game. So I'm going to wish everybody a wonderful college basketball season, and we'll be talking to you again really soon. Take care.